We are joined now by a leading First Amendment lawyer, internet policy expert, and board member at Engine Advocacy, a member organization that advocates for startups and tech entrepreneurship. Marvin Ammori is with us now. Marvin, welcome to America's Forum.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
We really appreciate you Skyping in, using the wonders of the internet to visit with us right now. Now, Marvin, it sounds stark, but on the level, is this the end of the internet as we know it?
It is the end of the internet as we know it. It is as stark as you've described it. What the FCC chairman is proposing, he's putting out a proposal on May 15th, not a final rule quite yet, but he's proposing to bless fast lanes on the internet, where the biggest companies would be able to pay Verizon and Comcast and AT&T to have better service, while the rest of us get stuck in, as you described it, a slow lane that the carriers will have no incentive in improving. And it'll really crush the kind of innovation we've seen on the internet, where you never needed permission or a lot of money to just start a website or to start a new media outlet.
Well, now you wrote an article entitled "The FCC's New Net Neutrality Proposal is even worse than you think." You've outlined some of this, but let's dig down a little more. What else about this thing, in your opinion, stinks to high heaven, or at least to the slow lane of the internet, as it were?
Sure. So one, the FCC wants to bless fast lanes and slow lanes. This is what AT&T and Verizon have wanted, what Comcast had lobbied for about 8 or 9 years. So first, we're going to have fast lanes and slow lanes that only, fast lanes only the wealthiest companies can pay for. Then the FCC is going to set up a legal complaint process that will be impossible for any small company to ever win. Completely vague. You'll need to hire an army of lawyers. And most of these companies, even the companies you've heard of that have millions of users, only have one lawyer on staff that covers their whole range of issues. So you'll never be able to beat a Verizon or an AT&T in court or in the FCC court on this issue. And to make it even worse, something people don't realize is you can have exclusive deals under the FCC's proposal. You can have a deal where the preferred TV outlet of Verizon's internet service is MSNBC.news service on Comcast is something different. And so it really will crush, I think, the kind of open level playing field we've had on the internet. And it's even worse than people have realized, and people realize how bad it is. They realize that it's very bad.
Marvin, FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler's past as a lobbyist and fundraiser has drawn criticism from some opponents who claim his appointment violates a 2008 Obama campaign promise not to hire lobbyists. Let's listen to what Obama said.
I'm in this race to tell the lobbyists in Washington that their days of setting the agenda are over. They have not funded my campaign. They will not work in my White House.
Well, now, gotta tell you, that's a little at variance with the facts, is it not, Marvin? Because Tom Wheeler raised more than half Obama's re-election effort, and ta-da! Now he's been confirmed as the chairman of the FCC. Marvin, does Wheeler's past as a lobbyist, does his role as a campaign contribution bundler for President Obama, what does that tell you about the gulf between rhetoric and reality with what's going on there in terms of the K Street influence within the Obama administration?
Well, the Federal Communications Commission is the kind of place where the former chairman is now the head lobbyist of the cable industry, a guy named Michael Powell. The former head lobbyist of the Wireless Association and the Cable Association is Tom Wheeler, who's now chairman. A former commissioner is now the head of the Wireless Association, was previously a lobbyist at Comcast. And so you just have this revolving door, and more than anything, it's an echo chamber. I really believe the FCC just doesn't talk to normal people who use the internet. When the chairman's proposal leaked, there was massive backlash across the entire country, around the world, and I think the FCC was shocked, right? Because they'd only heard from cable and phone companies and from some of the biggest internet companies, and so they didn't seem to realize there'd be a huge backlash. They thought that people would would just kind of move along because they're in this bubble. The other thing President Obama promised was that he would ensure net neutrality, that there would be no fast lanes. And his chairman, who is embarrassing the president and his entire, all the people who care about the internet, because he'd be breaking that promise, in addition to being, sort of undermining the trust of the American public and the fact that he is a former lobbyist for these organizations.
Now, Marvin, Mozilla, the company behind the user-developed search engine Firefox, has weighed in on this situation. Their top policy analyst, Chris Riley, wrote, and I quote now, "Even if Chairman Wheeler stands ready to use the FCC's full authority to establish stronger protections later, should they become needed, Internet users and developers cannot know whether future FCC chairs will maintain vigilance. In contrast, clear authority and meaningful enforceable rules would provide lasting certainty." Marvin, do you agree with what Mozilla is putting out there in that statement?
So the guy you mentioned, Chris Riley, used to work for me once.
Okay.
Fan of Chris and of what Mozilla is doing in general. What Mozilla is putting out there actually is sort of a creative legal solution because the chairman of the FCC and the FCC themselves seem unwilling to do the obvious legal solution. They're afraid of the political blowback they'll get from the phone and cable lobbyists. The obvious thing to do is to actually just, there's a sort of provision in the Communications Act that would require the cable and phone companies to treat everyone without discrimination, without unreasonable discrimination. And that's called Title II of the Communications Act. You'll hear some jargon around this. It's a very simple procedure. The FCC can just declare that these networks are the sort of basic networks of our economy, and that they should be non-discriminatory. Sort of, that's how we all think of these networks. And at the moment, the FCC is treating them as though they shouldn't be treated as networks, but as they should be treated like Twitter or Tumblr, something that you don't really regulate. And so what Mozilla is trying to do is they're trying to propose a way for the FCC to, fool the lobbyists and get the right answer. But really, there's a simple, straightforward answer, which will be described by people as Title II and non-discrimination.
We're getting lost in a lot of verbiage, and I want to make sure that we just basically deal with the principle of what is at stake here.
Right. What are the nuts and bolts of it? What does it all mean?
So why don't we just retitle this segment, at least with the exception of my co-anchor here on the desk, Marvin, call this Net Neutrality for Dummies, okay, for me.
Sure.
Explain it to a former congressman. You can even preface it the way people used to come to my office. The code word in Washington, Marvin, was this. People would come in and say, "Well, Congressman, as you know," and that was the cue to go, "Oh, I need to listen up." So let's take it from the top. Net Neutrality for Dummies. Give us the bottom line on this thing, Marvin.
Cool. So, Congressman, as you know,
there you go.
Been an open platform. You didn't need to go get permission from Verizon or AT&T to build a new application, right? You could just be one or two guys in a garage, and it's as cheap to start a web company now as it is to write a novel. You can just sort of try it out and test it out without getting any permission from anyone, and you get the same service that like Google or Microsoft gets. You get to reach consumers at their speed that they're paying for without any issues. And now the big cable and phone companies, now they have the technology to try to discriminate, to sort of pick some websites and make them faster and other websites make them slower, and then pay people to pay for better, or charge people to pay them for better service. And so where this will go is that if you're the little guy, if you've got a new website and you just want to compete with some big guys and just compete on the merits, you can't do that unless the first thing you do is go out and raise a bunch of money from venture capitalists or raise a bunch of money from Verizon or someone to even have a fighting chance. We're going to move to a world where there'll be haves and haves not on the internet in a sort of unequal web, and it'll be a lot more like like an unequal internet where the cable company that you choose or the phone company you choose will really determine the sites that work best and where you'll go, and you'll lose the consumer choice and you'll lose a lot of the innovation that we've seen over the last decade on the internet.
Right. So Marvin,
does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You continue.
Does that make sense? Is that
Yeah. So what you're saying is that's creating competition for these large companies, but it's kind of shutting out some of the small mom and pop. But what about just the average everyday consumer that goes online? What does that mean to that individual?
We got about
we
a minute,
live
Marvin.
on the computer.
About a minute to sum it up for us.
Sure.
Good luck.
Those of you who live on the internet, I mean, imagine if this rule had been around 10 years ago. We'd still be using MySpace and Alta Vista. So we'll see a lot less innovation, and you'll probably see your prices go up. Because when Netflix starts paying Comcast for better service, they're going to have to make that money up somewhere. So you pay Comcast, then you're going to pay Netflix extra. And you'll see a lot less cool technologies on the internet.
Marvin Ammori, we appreciate your insights on this and obviously your concerns about what may transpire with the end of net neutrality. We hope you'll come back and visit us in the days to come as we continue to monitor this debate and the efforts of the FCC. Thanks so much for your time.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
And he's an advocate, but obviously he's sounding the alarm from his position, and we respect that. Your take on net neutrality, why don't you check in via Twitter @NewsmaxTV, #America's Forum.